All right, yeah, let's get to Zod's team here. UCLA, man, I tell you, they are killing it in the transfer portal. They've lost a few players. I know I've heard some people say they weren't the most impactful players in the world, especially with the three guys they have coming in right now. Eric Daly, Skyy Clark, former Illinois player, or Illinois fans would know him, and then Kobe Johnson coming over from USC. Kobe Johnson, obviously a huge addition for Mick Cronin and the UCLA Bruins here. This is the number one transfer portal class in the 24/7 rankings. Unfortunately, I forgot to check the On3 rankings, but I would assume it's pretty high up there, if not number one over there as well. So, I mean, Zod, just talk to us, man, about this class. What are you excited about? What's the feeling here?
I think the prevailing feeling right now around UCLA fans is everyone's pretty hyped about this. Coming off of last season, um, obviously was not great. We had a losing season in forever. It's been a minute, and UCLA, for as up and down as it's been in the last 20 years, hasn't had many true losing seasons, and that was one of them. So Mick Cronin going out into the transfer portal and trying to rectify some of those issues has been a breath of fresh air. Now, the thing that's really enabled this is NIL. I think we've, hinted at it, Umar Ballo getting $1.2 million, like people tend to players, like it's the Wild West. And UCLA generally has been a very conservative institution in terms of playing with NIL, and it sounds like they've kind of taken the kid gloves off a little bit here. By some accounts, UCLA is kind of in the top five of NIL fundraising for basketball, so that's been good news for us, and it's showing up here, right? With these three guys that we've got committed. Just looking at these guys like Eric Daly, power forward out of Oklahoma State, was a freshman. Ideally, we can get 3 years out of him still. Obviously, with the transfer portal, you never know, but 3 years of eligibility. And when you look at this guy, he is a prototypical Mick Cronin type of player. High motor, super tough, plays a lot of defense, has a level of athleticism that allows him to switch on defense, which is super important for Cronin's system. And he has a little bit more polish to his offense than I actually thought he did. He can shoot the three a little bit. He has a little bit, some post moves. I'm super stoked for this kid to come to UCLA because we had very, very little production out of the four spot last year. So he's going to be a major, major upgrade there. Kobe Johnson, you mentioned coming from USC. Obviously, it's always great to steal your rival player, especially a guy as good as Kobe Johnson. We're very familiar with him. He has torched UCLA in the past, but I'm excited to see him in blue and gold now. Again, he helps with that athleticism, especially from the wing spot. He can play defense. He's a decent 3-point shooter. I think he's career 33% shooter. A couple of years ago, he shot 36%. And you can imagine he can shoot a little better than that on a team that values creating good shots. I see him as kind of coming in and stepping into that Jalen Clark kind of role. So if you're not familiar with Jalen Clark, 2 years ago, Defensive Player of the Year for the Pac-12, and also had some national awards there as well. We need a guy like that to have a wing defender. We just haven't had a guy that's been effective last season. So he kind of comes and fills that role. And then the last guy that we have is Skyy Clark, as you mentioned, by way of Illinois and then Louisville. Before that, he was actually committed to Kentucky for a little bit before he got injured. So he's been around the block. And people have knocked him for that a little bit, but from what I can tell, he really hasn't had any character issues. That's like his one knock for whatever reason. But again, he's a guy that actually gives us some ball handling. Dylan Andrews, our point guard, fantastic player, great defender, a little bit of a streaky shooter, but can carry the load there. But last season, we really did not have a guy who could handle the ball besides him, at least effectively. We tried it with some guys, just they were turnover machines. So getting a guy like Skyy Clark who can alleviate some of those minutes for Dylan Andrews, take some of those ball handling duties over. is nothing but a good thing. He's a decent passer and a decent shooter too, right? And what I think he brings to the table is some shot making ability. We just really didn't have a guy like that. So that I'm super excited for him. It's also a homecoming for him. So he's originally from LA. So that hopefully gives him a little bit of extra juice to step in and buy into the Cronin system and play hard. So and the most exciting thing about this is UCLA isn't done here. With Adem Bona leaving to the NBA, we're also in the market for another post player. TJ Kent, you guys mentioned Pharrell Payne. His name's popped up a little bit. I think the one guy that everybody on earth seems to be going after right now is Cliff Omoyuri from Rutgers.
Yep.
He would be a fantastic add to this team. I mean, the shot blocking, the athleticism, some of the post moves that he would bring, like plug him in there and we're cooking even more than we are right now. We're also going after Tyler Bilodeau. So I don't know if you're familiar with him from Oregon State. He was a really good offensive power forward, a 3-level scorer, can shoot it, has a mid-range game, can bang down low a little bit. He sounds like it's between UCLA and UW. He's from Washington, so there's some thoughts that his parents want him to go to UW a little closer to home, but we'll see what happens there. And then another guy that allegedly is already kind of silently committed to UCLA that hasn't popped up a lot is Dominic Harris. So he's a true 3-and-D guard out of LMU. So local guy, to the LA area already, played at Gonzaga for a couple of years before that. But he was like a top 5 3-point shooter last season. He shoots like nearly 45% from three. And UCLA needs 3-point shooting. We were one of the worst teams in the country at 3-point shooting last year. So adding him to the fold will be really important. Again, it's not official yet, but everyone talks about it like it is at this point. So excited to hopefully get that ink dry on the Grant 8 soon. But yeah, it's a super exciting time to be a UCLA fan. I think we're upgrading the roster rapidly. I think the scary part is what we saw last season and what we've seen a little bit with Mick Cronin teams is rebuilds with his system can take some time,
right?
Regardless of the talent that we add. And so while I'm excited, I'm also kind of expecting some bumps along the road, especially early in the season. I don't think it's going to be UCLA is going to be blowing teams out right off the bat, but I think we're going to see some growth over the season. I think by the time we roll around to March, we'll have a pretty formidable team here.
Yeah, I tell you, just the thought of Cliff Amorier and Mick Cronin getting up together. I mean, if Big Ten fans thought it was scary seeing Steve Peichel with Cliff Amorier, Mick Cronin is, he has done some amazing thing with his defenses. I'm not trying to take away from Steve Peichel, as most people know. I am kind of like a closet Rutgers fan as well, so you guys will figure that out about me pretty quick. But yeah, I mean, I guess, Zod, my question is, of those 3 bigs that you mentioned, the Oregon State guy, Cliff Amorier, and Pharrell Payne, I mean, which one of those 3 do you feel like you want, maybe not the best fit, but you just feel like you want the most out of those 3?
I think it's Cliff Amorier by far. I think he unlocks a lot of what Mick Cronin wants to do. And that's what I'm afraid of is I don't think I don't think he will, but I don't want Mick Cronin to lose his identity here, trying to rebuild and win after a bad season. I think, and I think he's very self-aware about that. I don't think he's going to do this, but I don't want to try to go recruit a big who's gonna just be pure offense or something like that. He needs to look in the mirror and say, look, I succeed as a coach with defensive players, guys who bring that type of play, and Cliff Amorier fills that need for us, fits within that system, and that's the guy I think if we can land would be an awesome fit and would really unlock this next season from being having a good team to probably potentially having a great team, maybe depending on how these pieces kind of fit and gel together. The talent will be there, just remains to be seen. Mick can fit all those puzzle pieces together effectively.
Yep, that's the goal. So Philip brings up a
Yeah.
good point here. Zod, you probably know best other than us, but can Oregon be forced to change their home court? What's it like
Yeah.
watching basketball on such a terrible surface that makes your eyes hurt? And I will probably have to listen to those games on the radio because I cannot watch on such a terrible court.
I don't know. I hate it as well. I think someone needs to call Phil Knight and get him to make some phone calls over there. But yeah, it's terrible. It is like seizure inducing. I leave those games with a migraine watching them on TV. I've actually never been to that arena.
Hmm.
So I'd like to go someday just to experience it in person. Maybe it's not as bad in person, but I doubt it. It's probably somehow worse. I don't know. But yeah, it's it's truly an affront to human eyes. Like I don't understand it.
If it like
Sorry,
if it
Oregon
was,
fans. Like
that's fine. Oregon fans hate me anyway. If it like was just like only the bottom, like it would be okay if it was trees, like only coming up from one bottom, but it's like all around it. It's like you're like looking up from the tree. I don't know. If Oregon fans like it, I guess good for you guys. I hate it. I'm going to be complaining about it all. Like, you know how people are complaining about the refs against Purdue? I'm going to be complaining about Oregon's court whenever I see them playing at
here's what I'll say. There's a certain point where you hate it immensely and you will continue hating it, but then you kind of just accept it and kind of forget that it's there. I think you'll find you'll probably dislike Dana Altman more than the court. but that's neither here nor there.
I can't wait to just hate the Oregon basketball program for everything that it is. So that sounds fantastic. Sounds fantastic. TJ, after hearing Zod talk all about UCLA, their transfer portal class going into next year, what you know about them, what are some of your expectations for UCLA coming into the Big Ten next year, and then maybe just like if you want to talk overall, like are they going to be a top half of the team or a top half of the league team? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's always weird for me now as I'm trying to think like what position a team might finish in. I have to keep reminding myself how large the league now is. So when you say top half, it's like, man, they
Top
still
10.
might finish, 10th. It's weird to think that way, but for next season, I think if UCLA can add a competent center that can give them quality minutes, I think that is certainly top half. I think an NCAA tournament bid is, the expectation of the minimum for UCLA if they add that. If they add a real difference maker at center, which I think is the hole right now for their roster, add a difference maker, and I think that's a top 4, top 5 Big Ten team. Competing with, it's hard to project right now because the rosters are still going to be going through some permutations that are going to shake things up, and we do not know what to expect from some of these teams. But at a competent center, and I think you've got a top 5 Big Ten team. Schedule's going to play into that as well. Who knows how that's going to look. Program-wise, if UCLA is serious about committing on the NIL side, which it does appear that they are now, you've noticed that from their recruiting wins. They don't get those guys without being serious about it. So if that's a long-term commitment for as long as we have this NIL format, I think that UCLA is one of the top 5 programs in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any way really to dispute that. And I say that as an IU fan that would love to consider Indiana a blue blood. The results haven't been there, so I think even an Indiana fan would have to admit that if UCLA is serious about competing on the NIL front, that they would go right into that conversation for one of the top programs in the league.
I'll say 2 quick things about that, both of your points. So from the center perspective, I am interested to see how Adem Bona actually develops this year. So Adem Bona came over from Spain last season as a freshman,
Yeah.
true 7'2" guy, very skilled. But his biggest issue was one, he just didn't adjust to American basketball and he got pushed around. So he was a little weak. Two, he just didn't understand defense the way Mick Cronin wanted it. So, having a full season now under his belt here, having an off season to get stronger, and learn the system even more. I'm curious to see how he makes the jump, because if he can put it together, he can be a true force. I don't think he'll be that next season. I think he will be good enough to be serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, 2 years down the road, he could be one of the best big men in the country if he puts it together. He has that kind of talent. On the NIL front, it is interesting because, UCLA has a very wealthy, very massive alumni base, and it shouldn't be tough to raise money for this. And when we do put the effort in, it's clear you can do it very quickly, right? We did it in the span of a couple of months here, and enough, gathered the dollars and cash here to put this recruiting class together. And we're, like I said, we're not done yet. We're also going after a couple of freshmen that have decommitted since some of the coaching changes as well. So I think it's absolutely sustainable as long as the AD does not hinder Mick Cronin. Mick Cronin, from the very beginning, has been, by all accounts, engaged on this front and has been trying. But like I said earlier, UCLA as an institution has been very conservative on this matter, and which I think hindered the NIL fundraising. It sounds like we're buying in a lot more now. So I think that it should be sustainable. We'll see. One quick thing, I see in the comments somebody saying, does the Big Ten have to take Bill Walton? I think so, because I love Bill Walton. So I'm sorry if people hate him, but I think he's a national treasure. And I enjoy the absurd. Yeah. That's controversial, but
yeah. No, I love the random. I mean, definitely not somebody I would want to be doing a Final Four game, but just a random game on a Tuesday night where I'm just kind of watching basketball for fun. It's not really a huge game. Bill Walton's in there talking about, I think he did a Zed Key game one time for Ohio State, and he talked about his pet. What did he have, a pet ferret or something like that? And Bill Walton just went on and on and on about this ferret for 10 straight minutes. And it was guys, there was a game going on.
I'm convinced it's an act. So I've had the privilege of meeting him a couple times, and he's a very nice, personable person otherwise, but you turn the camera on at him and then he's just all right, he's locked into his own weird, absurd world.
That's awesome.
I love it.
That's awesome. Kent, your thoughts? UCLA coming in the Big Ten.
First of all, if we don't get Bill, I'm not sure why we're even bringing these teams in the first place. We have to have him. That's a must. That's part of the deal, I think. Quick question for Zed. Mac and because I'm learning about UCLA, Mac and Andrews, are those two guys both back?
Yeah. So
okay.
Andrews is going to be starting. Mac, it was a freshman, got thrown into the deep end a little bit. I really like him. He has that dog mentality. He's just a guy that's going to go hard no matter what.
Yeah.
But I think he might have to take a little bit more of a bench role next season.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because you talk about those two guys and then you add Kobe, who I really like. And obviously we all know about Skyy Clark. And then even Daly, all three of the guys that you just mentioned, you have 4, almost 5 guys that averaged double digits last year. That's a pretty potent offense to get started. And then if you add another big, like TJ was saying, like a center, it's going to be a real good team to compete next year, and should be very exciting. Here's my fun fact of the night, though. Mick Cronin has not finished below 5th place in a conference since 2013 when he was at Cincinnati, and it was their last year in the Big East. So I like trends. He hasn't done it in over 10 years. I'm going to say that UCLA, here's my quick thoughts and my prediction. UCLA will be a top 5 team in the conference next year, and my prediction is they will finish in 4th place. That's my bold prediction for tonight.
I love
it. Does that stat count last year?
Yeah, they were 5th place last year.
Were they?
Yeah,
really?
came in 5th. Yeah.
Okay.
That's just how bad.
I knew you had a run
was.
there. I knew you had a run there where you played a lot better towards the back third of the year. So, yeah, that I wouldn't surprise me at all. There's a lot of. I think it's a very deep team that does not have too many discernible weaknesses as long as you get the development on the perimeter in terms of shooting. I think you're kind of in the same boat as Indiana, where you have a lot of things to like, but there's a critical piece that has to develop, and that's the perimeter shooting. And without that, the margin for error is so small in games against teams that can actually score consistently that it makes you a bit shy about feeling really good about things.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think it's still a work in progress for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's trending the right direction. So we'll see, and I think we'll get to the 2025 bracketology piece in a little bit. But I have a bone to pick with that.
I figured you would.